Agreed.
Thanks, Cathaoirleach, and thanks to the House. I'd also like to welcome the Minister, and I think we all know the expanse and the extent of his remit and brief, and indeed the important decisions and policy matters that have to be addressed within his department will have profound implications for the entire country for decades to come, and there's very little scope, if any at all, for any error. It was mentioned earlier on there about someone going bald-headed. I suppose I would qualify, Chair, under that category, and I feel like today, using my opportunity here to speak, to go bald-headed for what I believe is the condescending, cavalier and confrontational style of air greed, which in my view is going to lead to more trouble all over this country and make the Theresa Tracy case in Tullamore look like the teddy bear's picnic by the time they're finished. You would have to be heartless not to be dismayed and disturbed by the sight of a well-meaning 65-year-old woman ending up in Mountjoy, Cathaoirleach, in the case of power lines and pylons cutting through her farm. I believe that the Theresa Tracy need not have ended up in prison if Airgrid did their job properly. Airgrid are based here in Ballsbridge, and I have to ask the question today, do they understand the land, rural values and respect country people? Because they are not, Cathaoirleach, in my experience, upfront, cooperative and transparent in their dealings with landowners, and considerate when they engage in what they regard as consultation, because it's not meaningful consultation in my opinion and a first-hand experience of it. The plight of Theresa Tracy from Tullamore does not really surprise me, and I think there will be many more Theresa Tracys if if Airgrid don't cop on and radically change their tactics, which I believe at the moment represent and reflect a rather heavy-handed corporate culture and not one of consideration and genuine and honest engagement with communities. And their stance today, it seems to be that they have the power and to hell with everyone else, which is unfortunate because we all know at this time more than ever we need to have reliable and sustainable infrastructure in order to build our economic recovery. I see it at first hand in my own community in Rathneska and Timahoe, where another 25-kilometre line, the Laois to Kilkenny reinforcement line, which is vital for the southeast in Kilkenny and Waterford region, and it will propose to run down through 110 landowners. Sound and sensible farmers and families are now up in arms with Airgrid, and tensions are mounting and opposition gathering as a direct result, Cathaoirleach, of Airgrid's tactics and their arrogance and ignorance in what I can only describe as bully boy tactics. They are behaving more like the KGB than the ESB at times. Only last week, Airgrid threatened a local farmer, a gentleman who wouldn't say boo to anyone, when he was standing with a solicitor's letter and legal action, standing in his own farmyard, where they alleged that he was tape recording the conversation, when all he had was an old Nokia phone in his hand. And I think that for me is the kind of absurd and unfounded accusation that, you know, gives rise to local suspicions and leaves Airgrid being the laughingstock of the community. And that kind of carry on only serves Cathaoirleach to get people's backs up and fuel community dissent and divisions. If they don't change their tact, they will open the floodgates for protests, which will impede the rollout of critical infrastructure and see Ireland shunned for vital foreign direct investment, as vital projects are needlessly and unnecessarily held up. All reasonable people I know in the area accept that we need a secure and safe supply of electricity and solid infrastructure as a basis for economic growth and recovery. But Airgrid are going about it the entirely wrong way, and they must be called to order before they have another half a dozen Theresa Tracys on their hands. I've no doubts, Cathaoirleach, whatsoever as to the sincerity and the bona fides of Theresa Tracy, her family, her friends and neighbours. But unfortunately, the same cannot necessarily be said of some of those who have now got involved in her campaign. Sinister elements have now jumped on the bandwagon and are deliberately, in my opinion, misrepresenting the Theresa Tracy case for their own political advantage and ulterior motives. These people are even worse than Airgrid in many ways in their cynical manipulation of the issue and of this woman for their own selfish ends. These ready-to-go protesters are now blackguarding Theresa Tracy and also damage the cause of reasonable objections and legitimate concerns where they arise. Some of these protesters appear to draw their authority from Marx, but it's Groucho Marx, who famously coined the phrase, "Whatever it is, I'm against it." And this seems to be the manner in which they're proceeding. I want to put on the record, Chair, it takes more than wearing an open neck shirt in the Dáil or a woolly hat in the woods to make you a real friend of the earth or a genuine environmentalist. Therefore, it is only fair that I also put on the record here today that it has been suggested that the forest in Tullamore is of significant, thank you, Chair, historical and archaeological value. But the forest, the trees in question, are a commercial crop, predominantly evergreens, planted with the assistance of grants for the purpose of being felled and harvested. This is not Glen of the Downs or Watership Down. There's no Bambi in the woods. It's not a sensitive habitat at stake, as has been contrived by certain reckless elements whose actions are only serving to keep Teresa Tracy in jail rather than sincerely seeking solutions which would see her released from this terribly stressful ordeal. And finally, I'll wrap up, Cathaoirleach, so as not to eat into someone else's time. I would like the Minister to take the opportunity, if he could, to allay the concerns regarding the future of two significant semi-state companies, Bord na Móna and Cuillte. There has been widespread speculation in the media and elsewhere that some senior political figures in this country have been in negotiations and aiding and abetting with foreign investors, for instance, to buy out Cuillte. I'll wrap up now, Chair, just last sentence. And this, in my view, would be a seriously retrograde step and short-sighted. Bord na Móna and Cuillte are two strategically significant companies, managing as they do some of our most important natural resources. Between them, they manage in the region of 1.2 million acres, or close to 10% of the country's landmass. In the interest of best development of our natural resources, tourism, leisure, sporting activities, and most importantly, the critical issue of public access, it is my view that it is vital that these companies remain in public control, whatever the other proposals are for their development or merger. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Senator.